Welcome everyone to Almost Cancelled. I am Peter and I'm here today to talk about Debris Season 1 Episode 2. It's called You Are Not Alone. So, full spoilers for the episode. Now, we hadn't actually promised that I was going to come back and do any more of this, but I was fairly positive on the pilot, and the new episode aired last night, and I felt the itch. I kind of wanted to check it out and see how it was. And I'm happy to say that I'm glad I did. I thought this episode was better than the first one. The core mystery, the premise of the episode, which has got a lot of layers to it, so I'll get into that in a minute. But I think the two main characters are getting a little bit more defined. Their relationship, they bond in this one over Peeps, something that I have never heard of in my life. A food item, which felt very relatable as someone who interacts, so someone who is Scottish or from the UK and interacts with several Americans. So many conversations turn into talking about what weird, unique food either one of us have. So this debate between these two characters, or this discussion about these Peeps that he's talking about, was very relatable, despite the fact that the Peeps themselves I've never heard of. But still, that struck a sort of a chord with me. Also, Brian saying that he liked them stale, because some people like them stale. That I also found that oddly relatable, because I'm a bit of a weirdo with some food, where I kind of like certain things when they went stale. So, I get it. Which isn't to say much. I mean, obviously it's just a little human thing, but it just fleshes them out a little touch. And it was, don't get me wrong, it's a very obvious tactic, because they have this conversation at the start of the episode, and I kind of knew that by the end of the episode she was going to try a peep for the first time and they were going to bond over it. And sure enough, that's how the episode ends. And we have the drama, of course, of him knowing her father is technically alive, seemingly anyway. But he actually hears a talk about his death in this. Talks about spending time by his body in the morgue, which he obviously is like, wait, how is that possible? And this episode actually gives us an option, perhaps. I'm not suspecting that the thing in this episode is why that was possible. I feel like that's just like, hey, well, if this could happen, and clearly there's lots of weird science fiction-y reasons why that might be possible, beyond just it was not the real body, or it was fake, or whatever. So neat. But yeah, no, I mean, the two characters are growing on me a little bit. She tries to get to know him a little, and he kind of backs away from it and is a bit closed off, which continues kind of what he was like in episode 1. It's neat, especially in this episode, because the main guest star that a lot of the plot revolves around is so much about how his character breaks down into different parts of his personality, and the idea that Brian kind of retreats to just being an agent. Like, he focuses on his job because that's what he's good at, and it's a way of kind of ignoring everything he's going through. She catches him, Finola catches him looking at this photograph of a woman, and he kind of doesn't want to talk about it, and he's nice enough about it. He's not a prick, but he just says, yeah, not, maybe another time, not today. And of course he has that moment when they eventually save the character, and the guy, Eric, asks, so who are you? And he's like, I'm a federal agent. And so the idea that he retreats behind that. So, there's a bit of character building. But let's talk about the premise of the episode, because this is the stuff that's cool. And, some of the stuff that I liked about the first episode, which was the types of mystery we're getting, and then kind of the tone and the atmosphere that came along with that. Obviously the music adds to that, because the opening of this episode is like just random objects in a small town, notably metallic, start to just move, like as if there's something pulling them to a direction. So we see just various, some big, some small, just going down this very small town in these empty main streets. But there's like synth music playing, and it's a very interesting atmosphere. It's very intriguing, and it sort of makes me think a little bit of other stuff that I've seen in TV or movies, but it's the concoction of what they're doing is just a little bit different enough where I feel like I've never had enough of this. So I was like, oh, I'm into this. What's it doing? What's this mystery? What's it going on? So I'm liking the type of stories we're getting so far, 2 episodes in. So there's actually a lot to kind of break down here. So various random things in the town, which are all metallic, but notably not everything that's metallic has been affected. So it's not like there's just a big magnet, because it's not affecting everything that's metal. But certain metal things are being chosen and being dragged towards the outside of the town. And then a little bit later in the episode, once our main characters are there, they realize that it's building a perimeter around the town, like a wall. And then eventually they realize that it's actually building a perfect circle. It's not just that it's surrounding the town, that it's a mathematically perfect circle. And the epicenter of that circle, of course, is where they find the debris. Because for the first half of the episode, they don't actually know where the debris is. They assume, they're pretty sure debris is responsible for this because it's checking a lot of boxes, but they don't know for sure. But that's how the mystery starts. The mystery then becomes about a character. It becomes about this character named Eric, who just happens to be in town. But they've evacuated the town. There's not meant to be anyone here, and they find this guy, and he's kind of speaking a little bit weirdly. There's a little bit of a riddles. He's a bit confused. He doesn't know his last name. He keeps insisting that he's got something that he needs to do or something he needs to finish, but he doesn't know what it is. He doesn't really quite understand. So they think he's been affected by the debris, but they're not really sure. But so they send a couple of agents to take him back to their base camp, and that's fine. But then a little bit later, the mystery obviously gets really intriguing and I like this next part just on its own, because they find him again. They run into him again, and he's like trying to break into a car, and he's got blood all down his shirt. And one of the first things that Finola asks is, what happened? Why have you got blood on you? What happened to those agents that were with you? And the scene kind of implies that this guy might be crazy and psychotic, and perhaps might have killed the agents that they sent with him to take him back to the base camp. So I was actually into this scene at that point, because I was like, oh, okay, cool, interesting. He's that dangerous, but he's kind of erratically dangerous, and that was already kind of like, oh, like I'm intrigued. I'm into the mystery. I'm feeling the suspense of the moment. But they end up having to chase him, and they split up when he gets to this sort of warehouse they build. It's it's network TV. It's like a warehouse they build. But they split up, and again the music comes in. It's very atmospheric, and I was feeling kind of the eeriness of it. But what ultimately happens here is we get the big reveal of the episode, is that both Finola and Brian at the same time find this guy, meaning they find two different versions of this guy named Eric. And then it turns out that the version that was taken to base camp, he actually did get taken to base camp. There's three of them. So I like that little swerve, because they built up enough little bit of a mystery. It was like, oh, what did he do to those agents? But it turned out he didn't do anything with them. He was never with them. The first version was with them, and now we've encountered versions 2 and 3. And they're all acting a little differently. They're all kind of weird. They're all kind of a bit erratic, but they're talking about different things. They're speaking in slightly different riddles. They're in different states of distress, and we get a montage of them being interviewed, and he talks about a ball of light, and he talks about various things. Perhaps more notably, the one that Finola talks to references a woman, references letting someone go, and the regret, and like her being the best thing that ever happened to him. So much like episode 1, there is kind of a heart. There's like a human sort of heart to the story that ultimately comes through by the time we get later on. But we're not even done with the weird sci-fi anomaly stuff yet, because when they realize that his house is at the center of the circle, Finola and Brian go there in hazmat suits, and they're kind of investigating. They're trying to find the debris, and it's kind of cool because there's like the debris came through, like it's hit the roof of the house, but it's went all the way through the house to the basement. So there's kind of like a whole, like sort of, we see it from several layers through the house, and there's a noise, so Finola goes and checks something else, and Brian's the one who goes down to the basement. And then we have another great moment where Brian, looking through the house after he hears something, finds a clone of himself. So he says something like, no one can go into that basement without wearing a something suit. So after this point, anyone who goes out of the basement, they're not only wearing a hazmat suit, but they've also got like a chest plating thing. So there's definitely some kind of standard tech they've developed to do with the debris in the months since it started to show up. That I didn't quite catch the word, but that's when all the testing gets done. But so there's a lot of theorizing about, like, okay, so are any of these Eric's the original? Finola doesn't believe so. She thinks that there's an original and these are all splinters of his personality. It becomes clear as the episode goes on that he is probably dying. He was probably injured when the meteor hit. There's a trail of blood, which they do follow for a bit. And the idea that if each clone of Eric represents a different part of his personality and some of them are starting to die, it's like he's dying and the less important parts of him are going first. And the most important parts, what sort of he's holding on to. Which is where the heart comes in, because ultimately it's the one that is in love with this woman. That's the part of him that keeps him alive. And there's a little bit at the end where he phones her, and it seems like they're going to get back together, and he's realized that this is the biggest mistake of his life, that he's letting her go. So the human heart there's there's some nice weird again anomaly effects of at one point clones start getting made, because we see they just kind of like appear in the kitchen area, and they just sort of appear sort of in the like a couple of feet off the ground and just fall onto the floor. And there's a sequence where there's like a bunch of them appearing. We don't see them, but when one of the techs comes up and looks to see what's been happening, there's a clone that's got like half of Brian's face and half of Eric's face, and they're kind of like very Cronenberg-esque, melded together. Like, I was so into this plot. I was so into the mystery of what was going on. I loved all the objects forming the circle. But once we started getting to, okay, there's clones, and Brian encounters a clone of himself, which he immediately kills pretty much. If anything, I'm surprised they didn't try to play up the drama of, like, was it the clone that survived instead of him? And I think the truth is that that's definitely not the case, and it could never have been the case, because they've established over the course of the episode after that point that the original, like the clones are connected to the original. If the original is the one that dies, then the clones would also die too anyway. So there's no mystery in the sense that we know this is the real Brian. There's no confusion about that. But like all that stuff was really cool. But it was a really nice kind of hypnotically eerie moment when he encounters himself. Same with the search in the house, same with the finding the multiple Erics. It did a really good job of constantly giving me more stuff to feel, more atmosphere to feel. And one of the biggest complaints I have with network TV these days usually is just how bland everything is and how much I'm not feeling from anything. And I was kind of into it. It tries to give us a little bit more of Finola's personal life as well. Her sister, who seems to have drug problems, she's trying to contact her throughout the episode. She eventually has a phone call with her towards the end, and they don't have a great relationship. They've never really been close, and their father's death has obviously put a bit of a wrench into that as well. That's maybe one of the few scenes that didn't quite work for me with the emotion stuff, because earlier on when Brian's asking her about, her father, and the music's playing that I quite liked, I was kind of into the sort of the double-sidedness where she's opening up, but he's kind of confused because he knows that the father's alive, as well as just the trust issues that are there. Whereas here at the end with the sister, I just kind of felt like it was a typical kind of like troubled family member that's going to be a plot beat for Finola. Again, it's something that might improve with time as well. But I think they did a good job so far of trying to like solidify these two main characters. And they're still very much network TV characters, but little by little you build them, and before long, before we know it, we're going to be caring about them a little bit more, hopefully. And I think that stuff's been fairly well done, but ultimately it's the science fiction-y mystery stuff, and the visuals and the music and the weird ideas. I kind of love that it started out with objects moving and turned into clones, but not just clones. It's actually like parts of someone's personality that ultimately had a kind of a heartfelt message by the end. And I think the heartfelt part of this plot, that the part of him that kept him alive to be found, was the part that was in love with his the love of his life. That I think felt like it was just a little bit more reined in than the perhaps more overt stuff last episode with the actual sort of the kid who was created and then was luring people in. The idea of the mother somehow brought the kid back with her feelings. And I didn't not enjoy that by any means, but I think this maybe it's just a little bit more reined in, and it kind of felt a little less I don't know, saccharine, I guess, maybe the word I'd use. But yeah, there's a little bit more of the CIA and the MI6 kind of like not being honest with each other. There's like a Skype call at one point where they're both lying about not having other people in the room listening to the call, and we hear that the group that have the tech from episode 1 are going by Influx is their name. So a little bit there. There's a little bit of setup with the CIA dude who seems to be in charge of building the ship out of the debris. Craig, I think his name is Craig Maddox, where it just kind of gives a little bit of like his relationship with the CIA in the sense that he's kind of off the books and they're kind of just turning a blind eye and letting him do whatever he thinks is right. It's not much, but it's just enough to give you a sense that he's allowed to kind of act as he wishes right now, which makes him potentially dangerous. So, you know, a little bit of building like that, that's fine, you know. So it is what it is. But yeah, no, I am definitely, I'd say, even more positive on the show after episode 2. I think this was because we'd got the introductions out of the way, as often with network shows. Although sometimes network shows suffer from episode 2 syndrome. You know, we talk about pilot syndrome, but episode 2 syndrome is also a thing where sometimes they feel that they have to re-establish so much from episode 1 to just remind everyone of all the key things that they end up sort of almost repeating themselves a little bit too much. And I actually think this mostly avoided that by focusing mainly on the plot, which had a lot of layers, had a lot of stuff to get through in its 40 or so minutes, and kept it fairly engaging. And it never really felt like it was rushing through too much of it either, which is actually fairly impressive. I think the big thing here would be there's so much to this plot, to these concepts of the clones and discovering the clones, and then the idea that our characters can be cloned. If anything, that brief glimpse of seeing a clone that's like half Brian, half Eric, and it's like the debris like struggling, and it's confused because it's had DNA from 2 different people. Because I noted that there was still a lot of Eric's blood on the floor, and that's maybe why there were still clones being made throughout the episode. That was kind of my read on it, but I mean, it may not be that. It may just be that it made a connection, and once it made a connection with them, that was it. But yeah, so no, I'm digging it. I'm also digging the eerie kind of like the NASA like traffic control or satellite control jargon over the closing credits. That's giving me a bit of atmosphere as well. So oh yeah, I'm into it. Dare I say I'll be back next week to talk about episode 3. I don't have any sort of great wild theories as of yet about what's going to happen when we build the ship, what's going on with Finola's dad, but I do think the drama from it is being handled well enough so far, and I'm in for more crazy stories. This is exactly the sort of like episode by episode kind of fun plots that a show like this starting out can really start to build its history with its characters before we really start to dig into the sort of the larger picture that, you know, it feels like it's going to be heading to. I just hope that if it is really good and season 1 is very good till the end, that it doesn't get cancelled, because that's a concern. So yeah, let me know what you thought of episode 2 of Debris in the comments. You can like and subscribe, all that stuff. Get me on the Twitters at mail_fuzz for channel updates. If you want to support the show and the channel and everything we do here, you can head over to patreon.com/mailfuzztv and support us for as little as $1 per month. But you can also support us for free by simply hitting the like button and subscribing and commenting. All those things help out a lot with the YouTube algorithm. So please do, please do, please do. Otherwise, though, that is me. So thank you once again for watching and listening. I always appreciate it. Keep watching TV. Have you got any vanilla?